Hello everyone! Today I am going to show you how to turn these, around the ginger cat, these 10 flowers into an embroidery design. My name is Sarah. Welcome to my channel, Sarah Homfray Embroidery, a place dedicated to the beautiful art of hand embroidery. We've got tons of videos about it. We've got an extensive playlist with lots of different stitches in it if you want to have a go at lots of different stitches. We've got videos about techniques. We've got videos about materials and fabrics and threads and frames and even some on books as well. So we've got loads going on. Do click on my channel logo and go and have a look at the videos and see if there's something that might be of interest to you. So I made this video for you of 10 different embroidery stitches and it's been really popular, so thank you for all your lovely comments about it. If you haven't seen this video yet, do go and check that out up here in the corner, and I go through all of these different flowers. But what I thought would be interesting to do is, once you've learned how to make the flowers, then what to do with them. How can you use them in your embroidery? So I thought I would take these flowers, most of them, not quite all of them, but I'll explain that in a minute, and make them into a little design, and I'm going to show you how I did that process and how you can stitch the design. So these are the 10 flowers that I am going to use in my design, but as I mentioned, I didn't quite use all of them, so I've actually left the sunflower and the grape hyacinth off. I just felt I couldn't make these fit into the design, so I wasn't going to force it, but I've used these 8 flowers here, and I just want to show you that process quickly, because I thought I would start with the actual frame. I thought it looked really nice in this oval frame if I can make this spray of flowers fit in an oval frame. So this is a flexi frame. It just comes apart and that bit bends, and you can have it that way with the little hanging loop that end or the hanging loop there. And I thought, well, let's make it that way, basically because it fits on the thumbnail, the little image for the video, nicer that way. So I'm doing it that way. And if I take that apart, what I did was I actually drew around the outside of that. Now your fabric comes between this plastic frame and this outer frame, like this one here. So I've actually got that little bit of space as well for my fabric. So I thought if I take the two apart and I'll draw around the outside one, that will give me the outside of my frame, so I can make it fit actually in the frame. This is often a really good way to start a design, to start with the frame that you're going to finish with, because you can make it all fit. Now I don't want this to go right to the edge, so what I've done is get the size down from this. Just take it apart. So there's the inner one for that. So I actually put that in the middle and I drew around the outside of that one, and I want my design to sit inside that. That means I've just got a little bit of extra space here and it doesn't look like my frame is too small and I'm not stitching right up to the edge. So just wanted to show you that's how I came up with that size and that format. You can take that away. That's going to be our border, and then my fabric will come to here. So I've got this nice gap and this little bit here ready for my frame to go on. So I actually started with the frame, so I do recommend that if you know that you want to put it up on a wall. So then I started to mess around with the flowers, and I've actually drawn on in pencil first, and I've rubbed most of it out and gone over it in pencil afterwards, but I just kind of started to put them in a place where I thought that they would work in a spray. So I've done the larger plants at the top, so I've done the alliums here. If I put the alliums in the middle, they sort of a bit overpowering, so put those at the top, and the lavender sort of make a nice feature, and the baby's breath out to the side, and then the sort of flowers that have got a bit more of a focal point in the middle. So we've got the tulips here, they make a nice base to it. You can have a sort of solid base and everything coming out from the solid base, that usually works nice. So the flowers with the sort of more delicate flowers, I guess, around the top and around the edge, and the more solid flowers are in the middle. So I have messed around with it a little bit, and I rubbed some bits out and I redrew some bits, and it has changed again, and I'll show you that in a second. But as I said, I left those 2 flowers off, so there's actually 8 of the different flowers in here, and I thought I would just tie the whole thing together with a little bow at the bottom, and I thought I'd use that oval shape that I drew in to sort of confine the design. I wanted the design to sit in there, and I thought we'll actually stitch that and do something really pretty and make a nice border on that as well. So I've left that in, just in a little scribble to sort of indicate where there might be a nice stitch going around there, just to frame the whole thing. So after I had a little play around with this, and I thought, yeah, we're getting somewhere near. So what I did then was I put it on a light box and I copied it again. So I've taken out all the details. I don't need every little stitch in here. I need to know what am I going to draw onto my fabric, to copy onto my fabric so that I can stitch on it. So I started to refine it a little bit more. I need the shapes of the tulip leaves. I don't need the whole shape of the tulip because the stitch will make the tulip shape. So I just need these 3 stitches in here to start that off. And I've just got my lavender. I just marked on where these stitches will go, but again I didn't draw all of them. These are the forget-me-nots, which I've actually swapped. So on that previous one, forget-me-nots were here and the roses were here. And I was thinking about the colours and I thought the warm colours are all this side and the cool colours are this side. So I mean oranges and reds and pinks were sort of, purples are over here. And the blues and greens were over here. And I thought it was a little bit unbalanced. So I actually swapped those over. So we've got the nice warm colours of the roses this side and the blue of the forget-me-nots this side. And I think that balance will work really nicely. You can make a colour drawing if you want to. Make sure you've got those colours in the right place. And then both these flowers consist of 5 different segments in them. So I've actually drawn those in so we can mark those on and I know where the petals are going to be. I haven't put all the little French knots in for the baby's breath because I'm just going to do that randomly. You could mark them in if you wanted to first. And then I just want to mention this. So these are the alliums. They're quite an open flower. And if I draw a big line around it, the ginger cat's wobbling the table. If I draw a big line around it, then I've got to somehow cover the line. So I've just put little dots to indicate where the edges are and I can take my stitches up to those and then I haven't got to get rid of any lines later or think about how I'm going to cover those up. So then there was one more stage after that. And I just refined it a little bit further as well. I've actually moved one of the roses because it was covering this leaf. And I thought that's actually quite hard to stitch. So I'm thinking now about how am I going to stitch this piece, and it was a little bit hard to do that overlapping, so I've just moved that in a little bit. And I've also taken out the outlines for the daisies. Ginger cat wants to go out. To let him out in a second, Ginger cat. So I've taken the outlines of the daisies out and just put dots in again for those so I don't have that problem of a hard edge. They're a little bit harder to see, but I've actually done those in the 2 pens, which I'll show you when I start stitching so I can just see those circles. So that is my outline design. I will put this on a PDF on the free page of our website. There'll be a link in the description below this video to that. So if you fancy having a go at this spray of flowers, this little bouquet, then that's there for you to use. So before we get into the stitching, I'm just going to explain this briefly. So I've put this design on a piece of cotton. Now I've picked a piece of fabric that's quite tightly woven because this design is quite small. The flowers are quite small and that makes it a little bit easier for me to stitch because I've got a nice dense fabric to work on. I've got a backing fabric behind it and mounted it in a stretcher bar frame. We have videos all about stretcher bar frames and ring frames as well and using frames, so do go and check that one out. And then I've got that held in a versatile table clamp. I hope you can see that. Ginger cat who's joined me. This was just going to hold it really nice and steady, and I've got 2 hands free to stitch with, so that's that always makes it a little bit easier to stitch. You don't need 2, by the way. I've got 2 just to keep it extra steady, but 1 is absolutely fine. And if you're interested in any of these products, do check out the shop link in the description below this video. So if you enjoy this video, do give it a thumbs up. That will help to spread the embroidery love. And if you would like to support the channel, you can do what these people have done and click the super thanks button. It looks a little bit like this. I'm going to read them off this week because we've got loads actually. You're really enjoying the letters video that we made, so I'm going to have to read it. So, sorry guys, but thank you so much for your support. To Tony, to Jay, Raf, Chantel, Sonia, Teresa, Karen, Melanie, Anna, Joyce and Joyce, we could do Joyce's, Karen, Peggy, Sherry, Nana Cherry, Martha, Margaret, Darlene, Catherine and Kathy as well. Thank you so much for your support. It's really appreciated. We also have YouTube channel membership and Patreon membership. They are the same thing, they're just on different platforms, so you can choose which one you would like. And for a small fee every month, you get some extra content, you get to chat to me as well. And I've got another video coming for channel members and patrons, a little bit of a look into how I made my flowers and how I came up with my flowers design for this video. And the previous 10 flowers video as well. So if you're interested to see that, do consider joining. There'll be links to both of those in the description below this video. Okay, so Ginger Cat's settled in. I've got all my threads ready, so let's do some stitching. So I've drawn this design onto the fabric with a light box. You can put it up to a window and have the light coming through the window if you don't have a light box, or you can use the prick and pounce method or carbon paper method. We've got a video on how to transfer design, so you can check that out. Any of those will work nicely. And I've used 2 pens here, so I've used a black permanent waterproof pen, a very fine one, to do most of it. But then, as I mentioned previously, these edges of these flowers are not solid shapes, and I just put the dots in. I thought if I put them in with a different colour I can see them a bit more clearly, so I have used this water transferable pen, and this actually comes off water erasable, not water transferable, water erasable pen, and this will actually come off with a little bit of water on a paintbrush if I can see any of those marks left, and it just helps to distinguish these from the rest of it. So that was a useful idea to do that, just so I can see clearly where I need to stitch. Now, as soon as you start overlapping different elements, you have to think about how you're going to stitch it. Do I stitch the bit at the back first and the bit at the front first? Now, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Just sort of think logically about it, really. So I'm going to actually start with these daisies. So these are the daisies in the middle here with the blue circles around, the blue dots around them. And I'm going to start here because there's a lot going on behind it. So there's some lavender coming into it here. There's the stem of the alliums coming into it. And it's actually crossing over the stem of the lavender here. And I could try and put the lavender in first, and I could just come up to these places I've marked, but I stop there, and then when I do my daisy I have to make sure I cover the edge so there's no weird gap and the lavender just stops. You've got to be super accurate to do that, whereas if I do the daisies on the top first, I can then just come in with my stitches and make sure my stitches meet the daisy. I'm going to have to sort of slide my needle underneath a stitch just to make sure it looks continuous, but I think that just gives you a little bit of extra freedom with your stitches, and you don't have to be quite so accurate, and it's got to go here and it's got to go here. So I'm going to put these front elements in first, and then I'm going to come behind and do these behind ones afterwards. Some of the flowers on this one are also a little bit smaller than they were on the 10 stitches for flowers, the 10 embroidered flowers video, so I have to think about the threads as well and what threads I use, because these daisies are a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use fewer strands. I'm going to use stranded cottons like these ones here. They've got 6 strands in them, and I'm going to strand these down and just pick a couple of strands. So I did 2 strands originally for the daisies, so I'm going to just do 1 now because it's a lot smaller. So I will put all of the threads and the colours and how many strands I've used on that free PDF, so do go and check that out if you want to know exactly how many I've used for each flower. Now I'm going to start with the white petals. They've got little French knots in the middle, and they've got detached chains on the outside. All the stitches will be on that stitch plan for you, so you can see which ones I'm using. I'm going to go down to 1 strand, and I am using white, so I don't know how easily you'll be able to see this, but I'm just going to start with my knot on the top and 2 little stitches. Now most of this will be filled in with the petals, so I'm just going to do my 2 little stitches right in the middle of the flower. This is a really good way of starting, nice, neat, tidy way, and I've got it in the frame. So I've got 2 hands to use, so it's not so easy to turn my frame over. Once you've done the 2 little stitches, you can actually cut that knot off. It's a waste knot, so we're going to get rid of it. And that's a nice start for your thread. So I've gone down to 1 strand for this, so let's do a few stitches and see what it looks like. I'm going to do the petals first and then work the French knots in the centre afterwards. Because these stitches start in the centre of the flower, if I've already got my French knots in, I have to sort of do battle with the French knots a little bit. So again, just think logically. If you do it the wrong way round, the world will carry on turning. I promise. Doesn't matter. If you want to do your French knots, you can do your French knots first. I just found them a little bit easier to do afterwards. So I'm just coming and putting my detached chain stitches in the single strand of stranded cotton. I'm just going to go all the way around the flower, fitting them wherever I think I need to fit them, turning as I go, and I'm not going to worry about where it crosses over. So where this stem comes in, I'm just going to stitch my flowers, my petals all the way around here, and then when I come and put the stem in, I can just make sure I sneak it in there and make sure that all joins up. So I'm going to go and stitch some daisies, and then we'll come back and do the French knot centres. Fill in that little gap. And then I'll just take my thread over here and finish that off in a second. I'll show you how to do that. And I'm going to put the French knots in, so I've got 2 strands for this. I'm going to start exactly the same way. And I'm going to do my little stitch in the middle there. I've just about got enough room. You can turn your frame over and weave it under the back if you like. I'm going to do 3 French knots in the middle of here. And I just found now, because I've worked those petals already, I can put these in over the top. If I'm trying to put the petals in around the French knots, I've got a bit of a tricky problem. So doing it this way for that reason. One more there. And let's just show you how I'm finishing that on the back. So I'm going to turn this frame over. So there's where I've just done my French knots, and I'm just going to weave that thread underneath a few of those stitches right close to where I've finished my stitching. Just do a couple of times. Then you make a loop, take the needle through the loop, pull it tight, and then just back once more under some stitches. Then you can cut that off, and that's all nice and tidy on the back. I can cut my starting knot off on the front. That's a little knot from the white petals. And then I just want to show you quickly this water erasable pen. I'm going to use a water brush here. It's just a plain brush and you put water in the barrel. But you can just grab a brush and a little pot of water and just gently erase those marks. If you find that you come back, just do it again. It's just a case of washing that ink out, and just do the marks lightly when you do them in the first place. If you don't have one of those pens, you could just tack around the circle with a little bit of thread and then pull the thread out afterwards. That's one of the methods in the transfer method design. And they're all finished, so let that just dry off. And I'm going to look at the alliums next. These are sitting on their own. They're at the top of the piece as well, so there's no danger of me rubbing my hands over them while I work other stitches. They're not crossing anything else, so I'm going to work these next, but you'll notice this one is overlapping, so I'll talk about how to tackle that. So in the same principle as for the daisies, with something going on behind, I've got some alliums here, 2 alliums that overlap each other. So the larger one is behind and the smaller one in front. So what I'm actually going to do is work the smaller one first, because it's got these quite open edges, and then again I'll fit the one behind it, so the large one behind it. Now it can be a bit harder to start this off, but it gets quite solid in the middle, so I'm going to put my 2 little starting stitches right near that centre, because they'll get covered up. And then I'm going to do a great big eyelet, and I'm going to come on these little dots that I've made. Again, this is the pen that will come off with water, so it doesn't matter if I don't go on those, I can get rid of them. And you can do a few shorter ones for this. This would be a 3-dimensional ball, so you would get some that are kind of on the top, but they're not just all sort of around the edge of the shape. So up from the outside, try and go down into the same place in the middle. Some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter. Just vary that. And then we're going to put the little bits on the ends. We've got 3 colours for this. So you can start mixing your colours as well within these flowers. They don't have to just be one colour. If you want to do a bit of shading and try a bit of that, you can. If you want to keep them nice and simple, just stick to the 1 or 2 colours for each one. So this is where it's overlapping this larger one, so when I do this one I will just come up to that edge and then decide how many stitches I need for that. So there's not one way of doing it, you can just make these decisions as you go. So there's no right or wrong with this. If I did this again they would probably look different. So I'm going to just park that one out of the way down here, and when I next turn the frame over I can just pull that one through to the back and weave it underneath some stitches, because this is an open flower. I don't want to do my 2 little stitches because then I've got to make sure I cover them. So I shall finish that one off later, and I'm going to bring in the next colour. So I've got 3 colours. I've got a dark, a medium and a light, and I'm going to think about as well now where the light source might come from. So this is a sort of little bouquet and the light's shining on top of it. So I'm going to put those lighter stitches around here, and they will be around here and around here in this one, and the slightly darker ones underneath, and that will give it more of a 3-dimensional effect. So let's have a little go at that now. I'm just going to sneak these starting stitches on the end of one of these, I think, because I know I'm going to do my stitches there. So there's 1, 2, again you can just weave under the back, and I'm going to put little tiny eyelets on the ends of these. So if you've missed any of the little spots from the first time round, you can use those now, go over those. Just going to go round and put these little eyelets on the end of all the purple stalks. So this darker colour, the medium of the three colours, around the bottom, and then I'll come in with that light one around the top. So I just want to talk a little bit about mixing my colours. If I just stop the medium and start the light, I'm going to get a kind of a stripe around the top. It's going to get a solid block around the bottom and then a light bit around the top. And I kind of want to blend the two. So I'm just taking that medium colour and putting the odd stitch in, getting right into this circle here, because this one is on top of this one, so I'm not worried about that. So just a couple of stitches in there, just to break up those two colours. And I'll come around this side and do it as well. So it's going to fade out into the light on the top and then a bit darker underneath. So just a few stitches, then I can bring the lighter ones in to here. So just by doing that, one or two stitches, that will help me blend my lighter one in. So when I bring this one in, again I'll start that one on the end of those two little stitches, secure the thread. Now I can carry on with my little eyelet on the end. So I've got two colours in that eyelet, and you'll find that just helps to blend the two together, just an extra little detail that you can start to use now. And if you don't want to, it's fine, you can just keep going, as I said, with the same colour, but these little details will start to make a difference to your embroidery. Just another level really. And now I can just carry on all the way around the top, now finishing off those little eyelets in that light colour, because I've mixed that medium one in with it. So I've been over and filled this one in, because it also overlaps just a tiny little bit here, and I've got the light around the top. And if I have the light here, the dark around here, you should be able to see the two separately from each other. But I just want to show you this here. So now we're going behind this first one that I did. So I'm going to do the spokes right up to the edge of that flower. Now if these were actually on top of each other, you'd probably be able to see some of this larger one behind this smaller one. But this is the beauty of art and embroidery, is that you can make the decisions about what you put in and what you don't. So what I mean by that is, if I just put all the little eyelets on the ends underneath, it might look all a little bit messy and might get a little bit thick. So I'm going to make a decision about which ones I put in. So this is my middle colour. Again, just start on the end of one of those. It's the easiest way. Let's just put one stitch in there. So I'm going to go around here and put my little eyelets on the end, but here I'm going to make a decision about where I put the stitches. So I'm not necessarily going to go all the way around, but it needs to look like it's going behind. So I'm going to sort of stop it there and come around it. So this one looks like it's behind. So I've got this medium colour here against the lighter colour of this one. And this should look like it's at the back. I'm not going to put one on the end of here because it's behind this one, or this one, or this one. Although I might just put a little stitch here, as if it's going behind that first one there, and one there, and maybe just one there. So where it's definitely the other side, but I'm not going to come around here. This is definitely the other side of this one. If I come into here, this one's going to be on top of this one. So I hope that makes sense. Just putting in the ones that I think you need to, that you might just see peeking out from behind that little one that's on top. But again, don't worry, because this would be see-through, so you probably see a few of those, but just so it doesn't look too crowded, I'm doing it that way. So I can carry on with this one now. Way around here, again the lighter on top here, darker underneath here, and then I'll show you what that looks like at the end. So here's the three flower heads, and I hope you can just see the shading on those. So that lighter area on the top of each one, just making them look a bit more three-dimensional, and that this one looks like it's on top of this one here, just giving some extra layers. And when you overlap things in your embroideries, you start to get this layered effect, and it looks more three-dimensional. You can put things in their own space, but that looks a bit graphic. Just overlapping them like that will definitely add depth to your piece. So while I'm here, I'm going to put the stems in for the alliums. So I've got a couple of strands in my needle. So it was just one strand for the whole of the flower. I've got 2 strands in here. Now this stem would attach to the bottom of here, otherwise the flower will fall off. So I'm just going to take it as high up in there as I can, so it looks like it's attached. And then I'm going to do a stem stitch. I'm coming down, so the loop goes that side for stem stitch. And I've got to get it to go around these daisies, so I'm just going to take it right up to the petals. There. So that's the end of that white petal. And then I'm going to jump to the other side here. In fact, if I come up ahead, a little trick for you, it's easier to go down next to a stitch than it is to come up next to it, because I'm on the top, I can see it. So I'm going to go down right on the edge of that white one there. Back up in the middle. And the same here. So hopefully this will look like this stem is going behind. And if you see that angle of the needle, I'm sliding that underneath that white petal. So that really looks like it's behind it. I'm going to jump to this side. There's just a little short bit of stem here because it's going behind this leaf here. And this leaf is going to be solid here, and I might even put an edge around that. I'll see when I get there. So it's good to do this stem behind this one first if you can. And again, look at the angle of that needle underneath that petal. This is only going to be 2 stitches. And this one I can go right up to that design line. Don't stop short of it, go on the design line, and we can stitch over that if we need to. Like so, and I think you'll agree that looks like it's going behind the daisies. So this one's got little short bits, but it's exactly the same. So I'm just going to do single stitch here. I'm not going to try and do the stem stitch. I don't think there's enough room. And a little one there, a little one there, and then down into here. Now the lavender does come over this stem, but I think I'm just going to stitch all the way down this, because these stitches will sit over this quite nicely. So I'm just going to go through the little gaps and all the way down to the bottom. So I finished the stems of the alliums now, and you can see them going behind the daisies and having that layered effect that I was just talking about. So you can see these on top now, really giving some depth to the piece. And this is a tulip that's going over here. I got it wrong. I said it was lavender. It's not lavender, it's a tulip, but that will go over there quite nicely. I'm not worried about that at all. Some little stems here, so I want a few off the daisies, but I'm going to bring those in right at the end and just see what space I have and how I'm going to put those in. So I'm not worried about those for the minute. So what I'm going to do now is jump over here and do the forget-me-nots. So in the same principle as these daisies are sort of on top, I'm going to do the forget-me-nots now. You could jump over and do the roses if you want to, but again, the things that are on top and then fitting these other things behind them afterwards. If I did the lavender, that's going behind these thistles, so I think I do need to do the lavender first, so you could do this lavender over here as well, but then it's going to meet the tulips. So it's a little bit of a kind of a puzzle to work out what's going next. I have done a suggested order for you on that free PDF there, so if you're not sure you can just follow my order. So I'm going to jump in next and do the forget-me-nots. So I've got 3 strands of the blue for this one, and these ones are nice and easy. I've got my stitches marked in, so there's 5 petals and a forget-me-not, and they just come in little groups, these. So I've done this group of 5. Let's put the other starting stitch over there. This is all going to get covered up. You can put your starting stitches or wherever your stitch is going to get covered up. Let's go outside to inside. I'm going to do granitos. So it's up and down the same hole. So it's like a satin stitch, but you're coming up and down. And then you just keep going over that, putting as many in as you need to make your petal. And if you just hold it to the side, you can just control where it goes. there's nothing to worry about around this because it's the baby's breath is going behind it, so we'll worry about that when we get to it, so we can just have fun concentrating on getting these petals in the right place. And again, I'm going to do the petals first and then the French knot centres. It's just got one in the middle of these. So I've actually started this yellow thread on the back. I've woven it underneath some of the flowers because these are very delicate stems now for the baby's breath, and if I put this yellow thread, because I've got 3 strands in this, if I do my starting stitches here they might show, so I've just woven it under the back to start it, and it's just one French knot with one wrap right in the middle, each one. And the forget-me-nots, if you actually look at some real forget-me-nots, they do vary in colour quite a bit, so you could have fun doing these slightly different colours within the same group of flowers. They go almost a bit pink as well, so you could have fun with your thread colours for this one. Okay, so last one through there, like so, and then I'll just weave that through on the back as well to finish that thread off, cut off my knot. Those are my forget-me-nots done. So I think next I'm going to tackle the tulips. So I've got 3 tulips on here. I've got one in here that's just going to overlap that stem of the allium. There's a little one over here, not to be confused with a thistle, because they look quite similar. And then another one here. And then there's the stems, 1, 2, 3, not that one, 3, and then 4 leaves. So there's quite a lot of work to do on this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flower heads in first. Really going to have to try hard not to fill that one in. This one. Put the flower heads in first, that one and that one. Then join the stems on like I did before, and then the leaves are last because they're on top of everything. So let's do the flower heads first. I've actually got these really nice variegated threads for these, because they do have some beautiful colours in the tulips, and I thought it's nice to bring in a slightly different thread and see what that looks like. So I've got 3, so I think what I might do is put this red one in the middle, maybe the orange ones at the side, or I might even mix 2 strands, so let's see what we can create with these. So I've done a couple of tulips and I've had a little play with the strands actually, and I've mixed them up in the needle, and these are 3 strands and they're a tiny bit small, but I'm going to leave them in anyway, and I'm going to go to 4 strands with this one in the middle and see what difference that makes. And again I've mixed it up, so I've got 2 red ones and 2 orange ones for this one, and for this one on the left I did 2 orange and a yellow, and this is all orange. So you can have a bit of fun mixing your threads up, and the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that this isn't to scale particularly. I did have an idea that this would be realistic flowers, which I think they are, actual flowers that you could go out and get, that you could see, but yeah, the scale hasn't quite come out like that, but that's fine, not worried about that. You can always adjust that yourself if you want to, make your tulips a bit bigger than I've made mine, and I might have possibly put some more flowers in as well, and maybe I could get to the end and I could add a few. It's always fun to have a little experiment. So this is 4 strands, and I'm doing these stitches quite loosely, so I want them to fill out a little bit. I like the colour. So it's dead easy to do this, just a detached chain stitch over a straight stitch. So 3 straight stitches first, do the detached chains. I've done the left and the right ones, and then I do the central one last. I try and come out of the same place, that's what makes them look really nice and tulip-like. And suddenly we've got that nice shock of warm colour in there, the nice reds and oranges, which is really nice and balanced because I've got one in the middle and one each side, so the colours are balancing nicely. Let's just make sure these are pulled to the same tension. There we go. Yeah, so I think 4 strands is better for this, definitely. Let's park that there. Just give that a little lift underneath, make them nice and full. And you can see how easily that goes over that stem as well. So that well and truly is behind that tulip, and we get those nice layers again. So I can cut my knot off. Like so, and I really like that one. I may come in and do another stitch over the top of these just to make those a little bit fuller as well. I think they need a little bit more body on them. And then I'm going to do, I think, the stems next. So I'm going to come down here into here. Now what I haven't mentioned about this area yet is that this is going to have a big bow around it because it's holding my bouquet together, but I want some stems that come out the bottom. And I'd ideally like a mix of the colours, so the alliums should be coming out, everything should be coming through this point here. There's a lot of stems to do that, so I don't need a stem for each one. So I think I will bring the tulips down into here, this one into here, then I might bring that colour back in later and put another one in there so it looks like they're all coming through here. So I'm going to do that next, put these stems on, then I'm going to tackle the leaves. I've actually gone over the tulips again with a couple more strands, and again I've mixed the colours, and I really like this colour mix, it's really nice. And just adding those extra strands, I've just gone over the top, on top again, and done the same stitches, and by adding them it's sort of filled the tulips out a bit more, so I quite like that effect inadvertently. So just put the stem in. This is the same stitches for the allium, so this is the stem stitch. I'm just going to go down and out here to make the spray. And then I'm going to do something slightly different with the leaves this time, because they're a little bit bigger than they were on my sampler of 10 embroidered flowers. And I'm going to do a satin stitch on them as I did on that one, but the leaves are bigger, so I'm going to put a split stitch around the edge of them. Now this just helps to neaten it up a bit. Satin stitch isn't my favourite stitch, I'll be honest. It's quite hard to get really neat. You've got to really pay attention to it, and there's a lot of leaves going on here, and if just by putting that split stitch underneath, that will help me to get a nice clean edge on it. It'll just raise the stitches up a little bit. These leaves are kind of the base of this whole bouquet, so it'll be nice to make a bit more of a feature of them. So as soon as I got to the bottom here, I'm going to go up around there with my split stitch. So the split stitch is super easy. It's just a little forward stitch, and then you just come up through the middle of the stitch, splitting the stitch, and that makes a really nice super neat edge. I'm going to follow that line really carefully. If you can't see to come up from underneath, you can come up ahead and go back down through it, if that helps. Makes a slightly different, thicker stitch on the back, but it's absolutely fine. I'm going to go this way because I'm happy with that. I'm going to go around all of the leaves with this stitch, and then I'll come and do the satin stitch over the top. So I've been around the edge of all 4 leaves with the split stitch, and you can see that nice shape that it makes, and we can just now follow that with our satin stitch. So I'm going to start on this one. This leaf goes behind this one, so I'm going to do this one first. And satin stitch always works best if you do it at an angle, so about 45 degrees. And I'm going to stick nice and close to that split stitch now, and I'm going to go down. And it is important which side you come up and go down with your needle, depending on which direction you're going in. So we're going to go down, and the needle's going to push. There's a little angle there, and the needle's going to go into that angle just right on the outside of that split stitch. Stick to it nice and tightly. We've got a comprehensive video on satin stitch if you want to understand these angles a little bit better, and a download on the free stuff page on our website explaining it all, because it can get a bit complicated. But if you want to keep that angle, you've got to go the right way. If you find it's flattening out, you're probably coming up the wrong side. So do go and check that video out for a good explanation of that, because I just want to show you what that looks like over the split stitch edge. You don't have to do this split stitch edge if you don't want to. I just find it makes the satin stitch a little bit neater and just helps it to sort of come up from the fabric a little bit. Looks a little bit 3-dimensional. And I'm actually going to also change colour, so I'm going to park my needle there. Just bring it to the top if I'm not using it, so it doesn't get in a tangle underneath, and I'm going to bring in this darker thread here, I'm going to mix a little bit of this in so it looks like it's getting a bit of a shadow on it where it goes behind this front leaf here. So just an extra little detail. You can just go all the way down in one colour if you want to, or if you want to be a bit more adventurous and push your shading a little bit. So I've done one stitch in that, parking that back up there. Pull that back on itself, it opens up the hole where the needle comes out of. Go back down, put another 2 of those in. So I'm just bringing that dark one in a little bit at a time, otherwise you'll get a big dark stripe on it. So 2 of those, and then I'll do 2 dark, and then I'll do 1 light, and then I'll finish off with the dark. So 2 light, park it back there, get rid of that knot so it's not confusing the issue. Bring the dark back in, and if you park it close by, if you can't get it back down the hole, then it doesn't matter, you've only got a little stitch on the back. If you park it sort of up here, you've got problems. So, but if you just pull it back on itself, it should just pop back through. There we go. And close to the end, so I'll put these in. I might just go all the way to the end with this dark one now. Still angling that needle towards that sharper angle, and that will keep those stitches at a nice slant. Up on the outside, that split stitch, angle your needle. The outside, I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom of this now, where it disappears under that front leaf. So I think I'll get one more in. Perfect. Actually leave that one on the top down there. We can use that again for another leaf. I'm going to bring the light one in and go the other way. So just one quick thing to show you. We came up that side and went down that side when we went down the leaf. Now we're going up the leaf. I'm going to swap over. So I'm going to come up that side, and there's my sharp angle now. It's the angle between this row of stitches and this stitch here. Small angle, it's less than 90 degrees. That needle goes into that angle. And we're going to carry on up, and then I've got another lighter thread that I'm going to bring in at the top, and I'll just show you the end before we do the other leaves. So I've got my 3 colours in there. I think you'll agree that they look really nice together, and it's just sort of raised a little bit. It's really beautiful, just over that split stitch, so it's worth spending that time doing that, I think, personally. I'm just going to do the end, so I want a nice point on this leaf, so just keep the angle going all the way to the end. You're going to end up with some small stitches, but just keep that rhythm going. It's quite nice, I think. You could put an extra one in the end, it doesn't matter if you go over. Just try that, see what it looks like. A little short one, tuck it right in just to get a beautiful point. There we go, happy with that. So there's a satin stitch leaf, so just 3 more to go. Just coming to the end of my last leaf here, so they're all exactly the same in the way that I have worked them. Start in the middle, 45-degree angle, medium colour, light colour at the end, dark colour at the bottom, which I'm just putting in now. Nice and tight to that split stitch, so you get that nice shape of your leaves. And do check out that video we've got on satin stitch if you want to know more about the technical aspects of this stitch, just to help you get a nice smooth stitch. So last few stitches, and I'm just going to weave that through on the back to finish it off. So that's my tulips finished, so we're going to move on to the roses next. So we're going to tackle the roses, so in the same reason that we did the daisies and the forget-me-nots on the top, we're going to get the roses done, then we'll fit the baby's breath around the roses. And a little tip for you, if you've got more than one of something, the last one is probably going to be the best one, because you've had a little practice. So this one here, near this leaf, is a little bit harder because I've got to navigate it next to the leaf. So I'm going to leave that one till last. I'm going to do this one first, and then this one, and then squeeze that one in. Or we might do that one, and that one. But I'm going to do this one first, and I've got these lovely variegated threads. These are really beautiful for roses. They just do this natural change of colour. This is the DMC colour variations, so they just have subtle changes in them, these ones, but they just work really well for roses. So I'm going to use those, and we're going to put in the spokes. So we've marked the spokes on, that's what these 5 stitches are, because we're going to weave around those. Ginger Cat's just attacked me under the frame. Oi. Hey! That's naughty. I'm going to use the same colour that I'm going to stitch the rose in. I've got 2 strands, and we're just going to put these spokes in, so I'm going to weave around them so it's edged down into the middle. And while I've got this thread on, I'm actually going to do the others, because I'm going to use different colours, but they're all on a theme and you won't see these spokes. So rather than start and stop another thread and waste another thread, I'm going to use the same one to put all of these in first, and then I can just do my weaving. Okay, and then I can finish my thread inside the rose shape, because this will all get covered up. So the 2 little stitches to finish back to the top. Cut that off, cut off the knot, and then we're ready to do my weaving. So I've got 4 strands for this, so the other 4 strands from the 6, I'm just going to use those, and I've got it in a tapestry needle, so I'm just going to start that thread off. It's got a blunt end on it, but it goes through the fabric okay, or you can just start it with a normal needle. So that blunt end just means it won't catch when I go around the spoke, so I'm just going to weave over and under, all the way around in a circle. So over, under, over, under, over, under. Now don't pull this too tight, and the threads will separate. I haven't separated them previously, but you'll find that they'll do that as you go around, and you'll get a bit of a sort of more fuller flower. I'm going to cut that knot off because it's a little bit in the way. Under that one, so it's getting hard to see those now. So that one is under, over, under. So when you start to run out, you can keep going with some stitches if you want to. I quite like to add a few little extras on, so I'm actually going to go through to the back, come up underneath that one, do a couple of extra ones. That just makes it a little bit fuller. Looks really lovely. Okay, easy as that. So I'm going to finish that thread off, finish each one off just in case you pull it too tightly or something happens there, so they're all individual. So we'll finish that one off and we'll do the other 2. So I'm tackling this one next, because I think if I do this one, I've then got to get this one between all 3 things, which is going to be even harder. So you just need to be careful of the leaf here. It's right next to the leaf, and because I've got this in a frame, if I just push it up underneath with one hand, it makes it easier to get the needle in around the spokes and not through some of the stitches. So under, over, under, over, under. So you see me pushing it up, just carefully avoiding the leaves and the other rows. Now I've got this in the frame, as I said, so it's hard to turn it round, but you can turn it round if you find that easier. I'm swapping hands, but if you're not used to using 2 hands, you can just turn your frame round as you go. I'm getting a bit close to everything, so I'm now going to resort to just putting those outer petals in with the stitches. You can just choose where you want to do them. It doesn't matter if it crosses over that leaf a little bit now. Remember, those layers are what makes it look a bit more realistic. Right, so last one, and then we'll put some leaves on. Another variegated thread I'm going to use for the leaves, just for fun. Now you notice I haven't marked the position of these on, because I don't quite know where the roses are going to end up and how big they're going to be. So I'm just going to do this by eye. If you want to draw them on lightly with a pencil, you can. And I find if I just put that little stitch in, that helps me to work out where they're going to be. I'm just going to do a little satin stitch around it. If you want to draw the shapes on, you can. But they're very small, and I find that if you just do a few straight stitches into that centre, kind of just going up to that line, make them a point at the top, and they're as simple as that. But if you want to draw them, do draw them on. I shall put them on the design to download, so make sure they're on there if you do want to draw those on. But I would suggest probably doing it after you've done the roses, because you might find they don't end up where you think they're going to end up. So I'm just going to do them in groups of 2 because they look nice in 2s, and take them right up to the rose so they look like they're attached. And this green colour is showing up really nicely against the green of the tulip, so they look like they're different flowers. So then I'm going to put the other one in here. They are small, these leaves, so just a few stitches is all you need to finish off your roses. I think I'll get one more little leaf in there. It is a small one, but it's okay. Straight stitch, and then just some angled stitches into that. They're really small, don't worry about the shape too much. All the leaves would be different anyway if you looked at a rose. Let's put a little one on the top, I think, just for a little point, and that's all I'm going to do for that. It's just a tiny little leaf in there. I think I'm going to call those roses done. So there we go. You look beautiful in the variegated thread and the leaves as well. So really coming together now. So I'm going to do the lavender now, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might have spotted this baby's breath and some thistle already done here. So I have already done the lavender, but it was a little bit out of focus, and I wanted to make sure you could see it properly. So I've just pulled this one out. I'm going to do this one again, but we are going to get to the thistles and the baby's breath any minute. So the lavender's nice and easy one, just straight stitches, 2 strands for purple. Start it on the line. Everything coming together in the middle. They're a little bit like the eyelets from the alliums. And you'll notice I'm doing the purple flower bit first, and then I'll put the stems in afterwards. It's just a little bit easier, form the flower shapes. And I've got the pen design lines there just to guide me as to where to put the flowers, but I'm going to put extra bits in. Just vary the lengths a little bit. I'm just going to go all the way down the lavender. So the purple stops just above the flower. This one here goes down to the flower, but I'm going to put the green stems in now and just show you how to manage that. This is a stem stitch, but there's not enough room really to put a stem stitch, so I'm just going to do one little stitch to fill in, just to connect the flower heads up. So just to the ends of the petals of the daisy, like so. Just connect it up there. Jump to the end of this one, connect it with a single stitch, like so. Give me one length of lavender. So we're doing the baby's breath now. I'm going to leave the thistles because we have to cut those and it all gets a little bit messy and I need to clean up. So those are going to be last, so we can just do one clean up of the whole thing. So let's do the baby's breath. So these are nice and easy. Now they're quite delicate, the baby's breath. So I picked a slightly lighter green colour. I'm just going to do a back stitch for this. One of my favourite stitches. And then, as before, right up to the petal. Just slant the needle when you're trying to go under something. That just helps that thread to slide underneath. So ahead of myself, let's get rid of the knot just in the way. Back down to that previous hole, straight over those little starting stitches, ignore those. And just put all the green stems in this way. And then we will put the French knots in over the top afterwards. Okay, so again you'll notice I haven't put the French knot positions in, I haven't marked those in. I'm just going to eyeball this. You can put a little tiny dot if you want to. Make sure it's very small though so you can cover it up. I'm just going to do these little groupings of French knots. I've got 3 strands for this. I'm just wrapping once. We have an ultimate guide to French knot video if French knots are your nemesis and you can't do them. And in that video I just tell you how to correct it if something's going wrong and what's probably going wrong and what you can do about it. So do check that one out if you struggle with these, because they're not difficult stitches, and it's a shame people don't use them because they are not quite sure what's going wrong with them. So just sort of little grouping around the top of each of the stems here. You can put some closer to each other. It's a tendency to have them all nice and evenly spaced, but they wouldn't be like that. So try and do a couple close to each other like that, and then you can leave a little gap and do one there like that. And then just step back and have a look and think, does it need any more around that bit? Carry on around. So you can put as much of these little flowers on as you want. You can always go around once, and then if you think it needs some more, you can come back and do it again the other way. So I am just going to do loads of French knots in here, and then we'll see what that looks like when it's finished. So I have gone back around just to put a few extra in. Sometimes it's nice if they just cross over the little stems. But the flowers are all sort of around the top of this plant, so don't go too far down the stem, but just put one more in there, and I think I might call that done. I think that's enough. So I'm going to jump over to the side and do those ones next, and then we're going to have a look at the thistles. So we're going to do these lovely little thistles here. They're so cute this size. So these are a bit smaller than they were on the sample, so I've just changed my thread up, down a little bit. So we've got 3 strands in the green, and we're going to use all 6 strands in the purpley colour. And this length of thread is my fingertip to the inside of my elbow, and I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers. So 2 fingers like so. So I've got a little coil like that. Squash that in half. Come up on the top of the stem there. I'm just going to take a stitch over that, trapping that thread between. Let's do another one just for a bit of security. Like so, and then I'm going to fold that up. And then a little bit of couching over that to hold that down, and those lines there. And you can see now why I'm doing these last, because this would be really hard to stitch anything underneath this fluffy stuff now that it's on there. So leave fluffy bits till the end. Just going to stitch over that and make the flower shape, and then some straight stitches over that to hold the purple down. Go right into the purple stitches. Until they're all covered. Okay, I think that's enough, so I'll come back and put this stem in, but I just want to cut that and show you how to do that. So the easiest way is just cut through all the loops. And then we've got to cut all of that off without cutting anything underneath, so a little trick for you, a bit of paper. Cut on the paper. And if you just want to get the fluffy bits off, a little bit of sticky tape, just lift them off like so. A stray one there. Fluff it up a little bit. Just to put this last stem in for the thistle, and I've got a couple more stems to add. I'm going to put a couple in for the daisies, one through here, probably one through here. I think I'm going to connect up the forget-me-nots as well, so a thin one through here and down here. And then I'm going to put a border around it. So back stitch for the border for this, in 6 strands of the white, the same white I used for the daisies, to tie it all in. And then I'm just going to weave a white thread back around the back stitches, back and forth. Don't pull too tightly, just to make that a little bit more of a decorative edge. So my border and then woven back stitch is done all the way around there, so just one more detail to go, and that's the little bow. I'm going to use a double silk ribbon here, just 2 ribbons in the needle. I'm just going to tie it in a bow around my bouquet. So here is the finished piece, and if you want to know how to frame it in one of these frames, you can check out this video up here. Lots of details on how to do that, and you can have a go at your own flower spray as well. You can put whatever flowers you like in it, or just do a few flowers and see what you can come up with. So I hope you have enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and I will see you next time.